I won't touch pictures. I make it a rule. I've seen too many fingers burned. Woman comes in this morning, starts rooting about in her shopping bag, saying she's got something I might be interested in, been in the attic, etc., etc. The usual rigmarole. Hadn't given it a thought, apparently, until she'd seen something similar on, and I knew what was coming, that television program about antiques. And someone on the program from Christie's, I said, Barrowboys. She said, come again. I said, Sotheby's, Christie's, Barrowboys. Nicely spoken, lovely suits, fingernails immaculate, but Barrowboys. She said, well, anyway, he said £2,000. I said, well, he would, wouldn't he? He doesn't have to get up at 4 a.m. and flog his ageing Volvo halfway across England just to sit all day in a freezing marquee and come away with 2 trivets and an umbrella stand. £2,000. It was one step up from Highland cattle. She said, it's an original oil painting. Look at the work that's gone into it. I said, Madam, if you'll forgive me, I could just point you down the street in the direction of a Tisket a Tasket. Basically a cafe. It doubles as a bric-a-brac shop. And Yvonne does pictures on the side. Though what I didn't say was that they tend to be mice in pinnies type of thing. I popped over the road to tell Derek and Cyril. They'd just had a buyer in from Stockholm who'd practically cleared them out. Staffordshire, mostly, which is their big thing. Doesn't do a thing for me, but Derek and Cyril love it. It's chunky, I suppose. I don't have a particular line. Good cottage furniture about sums it up. Elm, fruitwood, anything painted. And clocks, of course, when I can get hold of them, plus the occasional pot. There are some things I refuse to sell. Teddy bears, for instance. Teddy bears are a minefield. I was at a sale in Suffolk, and I saw a teddy bear actually torn apart by 2 bidders. One of them a vicar. Of course, these days, everybody's going in for little sidelines, eking out the job with jam and little pots of this and that. Woman came in the other day. Had I got any chutney? I said, I'll start doing chutney, madam, when Tesco's start doing gate-leg tables. Still, the garage does potpourri, so what can you expect? I think of Lawrence. Christ, old girl, I didn't sink my gratuity into this place to start selling bloody condiments. He was in bomb disposal, which is why, to begin with, we went in for clocks. Oh, and there were clocks then. Well, there was everything then. Pottery, furniture, stock no problem. And if one had the eye, which I do, one could pick and choose. Not anymore. Take what you can get, and money, money, money. If you love beautiful things, which is why I came into the business in the first place, it just breaks your heart. And of course, everybody's an expert these days, up to all the tricks of the trade. You see something catch their eye, and they don't ask about it straight away. They'll inquire about something else, pretend they're not interested, and then it's, oh, and incidentally, how much is this little thing? It's the oldest dodge in the world, and they expect you to be taken in by it. Of course. They've picked all that up off the television. I won't have one. I said to Nancy Barnard, I refuse to watch. She said, oh, well, we only have it because of Faye. Faye. They're both glued to it. I wish I could shift this refectory table. It was a real snip when I got it, but I've had it a year now and not a nibble. It's a lovely top. Elm. Oh, there's old Miss Ventriss seeing what there is. Took 2 Crown Derby plates off her once, just as a favour. One of them chipped. Yes, you're looking a bit poorly. Oh, she's going on. Lovely cameo brooch. They talk as if you're not in the room. Couple in just now, looking at the Asiatic pheasant tureen. £60, she said. I gave £2.50 for mine. Yes, but when, I want to say? 1955? Some of them so careless, they practically hurl things to the floor. Oh, I've got a notice up now. Lovely to look at, nice to hold, but if you break it, I say sold. Oh, somebody looking in. It's a goldfish bowl. No, you can't see the price, however far you bend. You're going to dislocate your neck and you still won't be able to see it because I've carefully arranged the ticket so that if you want to see the price, you'll have to come into the shop, which you're not doing. Oh. Even if they could see the price, they wouldn't understand it because I've got my little code. I could take 1,300 for this at a pinch. I've had it a year now. Too long. Oh, Lawrence would be reading me the riot act. Keep your stock ticking over, old girl. Move it on. And he did, even if it meant not making much. It's like Scrabble, my dear. Start saving up for the big one, the 7-letter word, and you're finished. Get your letters down. £5 here, £10 there. Buy for X 1 week, sell for Y the next. That's the way you make your money. Look well in a boardroom. Or one of those loft conversion things. I'd even consider £11.50. I kept wondering about Miss Ventriss. So, what with not having seen her for a bit, I thought I'd just give a knock on her door and see how she was. She lives in one of those double-fronted houses on the Mount. Original fanlight over the door and a lovely knocker. Hand grasping a ball. Can't be later than 1820, though the house, I would have said, was Victorian. Then, of course, it's stucco, and that can cover a multitude of sins. And once I get inside, I realise it's 17th century and seemingly never been touched. And I'm right, of course. She isn't well. Been in bed for a fortnight. And it's Mabel, the home help, who answers the door. Now, I know Mabel of old, because she's been in from time to time with odd bits of stuff, little things, silver vinaigrette, jet brooch, spoons and whatnot, stuff I've been able to find homes for straight away. They all come from Newcastle, apparently, where her aunts had to go into a home. Anyway, she takes me upstairs to see Miss Ventriss, who says that she's had all sorts of tests, and they still don't know what's wrong. which probably means that they do. Thin little hand, like dried leaves. Tragic. Lovely bedside table with pie crust moulding. District nurse comes in while I'm there, plunks a bottle of medicine straight down on it. The criminal. I help give her her Benja's food, only she fetches it straight back. It's a silver spoon, and while they're cleaning her up, I look at the hallmark. Provincial, Bristol, about 1830. Same sort as Mabel brought in. I love a nice finish. Maple, rosewood, walnut particularly. What I cannot abide is stripped pine. I can't see the point, quite frankly. And they're fanatics about it, some dealers. I mean, still, they'll strip everything. 5 minutes in the caustic tank, and it's 100 years of tender, loving care down the drain. All the character gone. I was thinking about this at Miss Ventriss's because there's polish everywhere. Walnut, elm, fruitwood. It's like a jewel box. I've been popping in there on a regular basis lately, just to relieve Mabel a bit, because the old girl's scarcely conscious now, and she doesn't know if I'm there half the time. I sit by the bed, clock ticking, carriage clock, tortoiseshell veneer, fluted, about 1750. Lovely. But of course, everywhere you look there's something. Oh, it's like houses used to be in the 50s, and most of it museum quality, practically. It comes from her grandfather, who was a great collector, apparently. I said to Mabel, "What's going to happen to all this?" She said, well, she didn't think there were any relations. There'd been a niece in Canada, but she had a feeling that she'd been in an airline crash. I couldn't get her to show me round at first. Said she was under strict instructions from the solicitors. I said, "What solicitors are those?" She said, "Patterson, Beattie and Brown." I said, "Well, there's no problem there, because I took a knee-hole desk off Mr. Patterson and gave him a very good price." She was still a bit reluctant, so I said, "Mabel, I can well understand that you have to be careful. It's so easy for stuff to go walkabout, particularly with old people. Silver, little brooches, you know the sort of thing." Well, she went a bit quiet, so I said, "Shall we start with upstairs?" And I couldn't believe it. Every room a treasure trove. Amazing. When I was going, Mabel said, "I'll try and steer some of it your way if I can." I said, "Well, yes, there'd be a nice little margin on most of it, even running to the two of us, if the worst comes to the worst, of course." Mabel said yes, though she seems a bit better today. Kept more of her dinner down anyway. Though you've only to look at her under that nightdress and there's nothing there. I said, "Yes. Where did that nightdress come from?" She said, "Her grandmother, I think. It's all hand done. There's half a dozen of them in the linen cupboard. Some of them never worn. Tragic." Of course, the sharks are beginning to gather. I'm sitting by the bed this afternoon. and Derek knocks on the door bearing one of Cyril's wizened egg custards. Mabel didn't let him get his foot round the door. Only then Nancy Barnard comes rolling up in those terrible beetroot slacks, saying that she and Fay swear by some tincture from the swamps of Paraguay that they'd bought in Chelmsford. Should she get her some? I said to Mabel, they're so transparent. Miss Ventriss is asleep, so I have a little look at her bed. It's a country piece, about 1830, I'd have said. Oh, and in such good condition, painted, which always gets my vote. The doorbell goes again, and while Mabel is downstairs, I lift up the mattress. And where the paint's not worn, it's as good as new. I'm just tucking the sheet back when I saw that Miss Ventriss had her little eyes open and she's watching me. I think she said, "Happy?" Only Mabel came in just then. Of course, it's hard to tell when they get to that stage. It goes to the brain. The visitors, the priest, come to anoint her and whatnot, just to be on the safe side, as the doctor said that she could go at any time. Mabel and I left him to it and stood respectfully in the background. Had a little embroidered cloth that he covered the chalice with. Arts and crafts by the look of it, and a beautiful thing. Pity it can't be used for something. Of course, when she said happy, what she probably meant was she was happy. I said to Nancy Barnard, "Am I a person?" She said, "Come again, love." I said, "Am I a person or simply a professional bargain hunter?" Because that was what the woman was implying. I said, "Mrs. Berghoff, I have been coming here as a friend." She said, "I know that." Bright red cardigan, carmine lipstick, and at the funeral, leather trousers. And even Nancy had managed to find a skirt. Niece. Never even met Miss Ventriss. Went to Canada at the age of 6. Mabel had given me to understand that she'd died in an airline crash. Turns out what she'd had was a hairline fracture. No crash at all. Of course. She comes in for everything, which is understandable, except that no sooner does she see the place than she announces that aside from 1 or 2 of the choicest pieces, which she'd be keeping for herself, she was sending the rest to Phillips. I said, "Mrs. Berghoff, I'm sure there are several local concerns who'd be willing to give you a very good price, and you wouldn't be landed with the vendor's commission." Turns out she's not paying much commission anyway. The stuff is of such good quality, they'd come to an arrangement. It was then she offered me this box of odds and ends from the desk drawer. I'd been very kind to her aunt, she said, and she wanted to give me a bit of something in return. I said, "Thank you very much, but I don't want to be given anything." She said, "That's good, because the solicitors are being such sticklers that I probably ought to charge you a nominal price anyway. Then it's all legal and above board. Shall we say £5? I said, "I don't sell bric-a-brac. She said, well, you give me £5, and if it fetches more, you can give the rest to Oxfam. I said, what do you do in Canada? She said, public relations. I said, oh, pointedly, then you must be on holiday. Gave her the £5, took the box and went. Of course, being Canadian, she probably thought I was being nice. I haven't been able to face unpacking the box. In fact, I've only just done it now, much as I expected. 1 or 2 pressed glass ashtrays that I'll get £2 or £3 apiece for, a little gunmetal cigarette case and a serviette ring, all items for the oddments box. The only thing of any interest at all is a rather smudgy drawing of a finger. Well, I think it's a drawing, maybe a print. But the frame is very distinctive. It's quite small, but with little doors that open up, so it looks a bit like an altar. 19th century, probably. When I've got a minute, I'm going to take the drawing out and put something more conventional in, a flower print or something, smarten it up a bit. Might fetch £30 or so. You never know. Funny thing to put in a frame. A finger. I think the refectory table's gone. Came in this morning. Only young, curly hair. Can't be much more than 20. I asked him, was he looking for anything in particular? He said, well, he did want a little something for his girlfriend, but he was interested in the refectory table. Didn't begin by asking the price, which is always a good sign, just could I measure it for him? While I was rooting about looking for a tape measure, he picks up 1 or 2 bits and pieces. Now, I brought out Miss Ventriss's little drawing, thinking to spend the afternoon taking it out of its frame, and I just popped it down on the refectory table, where he picks it up and puts it to one side, so as to look more carefully at the tabletop. When I'd measured it, he got underneath to have a proper look. Well, there's a bit of worm, but in a piece of that age it would be unusual if there wasn't. And anyway, we both think it's dead. So he said, what's the best I can do? I'd given 1,100 for it a year ago, so I said, well, I can't really do much under 1,700. Say 1,650. It's elm. He said, I know, it's beautiful. If it will fit, it's just what we're looking for. So I gave him my card. He writes down the measurements, and he's going to ring me back this afternoon. Just as he's going, he picks up the drawing again and says, what is this? I said, well, it's a finger, isn't it? He said, yes. I'm not sure I like that, but it's a nice frame. How much is it? I thought, well, it's an educated voice. I'll take a chance. I said, I can't really do it for much under 100. Well, he puts it down pretty smartish. I said, the frame alone is worth more than that. He said, yes, it's the frame I'm really interested in. I reckoned to look at my book, and I said, well, I can do it for 90. And if you're not particular about the drawing, I can take it out. He said, oh, no, don't bother. I can do that. Just then someone comes in. He writes me out a check really quickly. I wrapped it up and said, and you'll let me know about the table. He said, what? I said, the table. He said, oh, yes. I'll phone you this afternoon. I think it'll be just right. I've just popped along to the bank to put the cheque in, and now I'm waiting for him to call. It's funny. I'd come down to 90, but he was in such a rush, he still made it out for 100. I said, "No, I'm not the sort of person who is resentful. I made my profit, they made theirs. Selling on, everybody makes something. That's what the antique business is all about." They'd stood me in front of the shop. This young woman stood by the camera. I had to look at her, not at it. She said, "Would I be asking them for an ex gratia payment?" I said, "No, I didn't think I'd be asking, and I'm sure they wouldn't be offering. Of course, it would be nice if they did. I think I would, in the circumstances." I'd actually forgotten all about it. It was 6 months ago at least. Apparently they'd had to do all sorts of tests on the paper and whatnot. Then Nancy Barnard comes banging on my window one morning before I'd even opened, holding up a copy of the Telegraph and pointing to the photograph on the front page. And there's the young man with a blow-up of the finger, which so all, or anyway some of the experts say, is by Michelangelo. A study, one of the few apparently, of the hand of God on the Sistine Chapel ceiling. "Oh, I knew I'd seen it before," says Nancy, "only it was Faye who pointed it out. Glued to the telly box as usual, she said, 'It's just like that finger they have at the start of the South Bank show. Such a shame. If only you'd watched the telly, you might have known.'" What makes it special, apparently, is the ring. God doesn't have a ring on his finger on the ceiling. I mean, why should he? But the ring on the finger has very faintly the arms of the Pope who commissioned it, Sixtus something or other, who was Michelangelo's patron. Oh. Very satirical, apparently, on Michelangelo's part. Only I don't see the joke. But all of which, needless to say, bumps up the estimated price. Not sold yet, but could fetch anything. 5 million, 10 million. Unique. A finger. That size. "Poor you," says Nancy. "Oh," I said, "it happens." Only when she'd gone, I was physically sick. The young man who bought it, whom I'd thought looked quite classy, turns out to be some young blood from Christie's. Says in the paper, he picked it up in a junk shop. Junk shop. Of course, the person who ought to feel really sick is the niece, Mrs. Berghoff. I don't think she can ever have looked in the box, so she'll have no idea. So I dropped her a line, wiped the smile off her face. I've been quite busy. Mostly people just wanting to look. At me, chiefly. Still, they bought the odd thing. Sold a couple of lemonade bottles yesterday. Only my stock's low. Can't face going to sales yet. And I've still got this bloody refectory table. Knee-deep in tomatoes, so I made some chutney. Frilly tops, italic label, 95p a bottle. Sold 3 this afternoon.